Hi, my name is Spengler, and we're going to be talking today about configuring a client-to-site VPN. Client-to-site VPNs are very popular among trying to get your Salesforce or remote users connected into your network. And of course, it provides a great way to bring the users into your network without a lot of challenges and difficulty of worrying about security, such as in the public address spaces out on the internet. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at first configuring the server portion of the client to server, which is we're going to be using a router in this case, and our configuration tool is going to be SDM, and then we're going to go ahead and use Cisco's VPN client to make the connection, and we're going to take a look at some of the settings after that. So let's go ahead and take a look at SDM and the settings it takes within SDM to make this connection happen. Looking at SDM, switch over, what I've done is, if you look at my topology on the screen, I have router 1, router 3, router 2. I also have PCA and PCC. I'm going to be using PCA as my VPN client, and I'm going to be using router 3 as my VPN server. Now, effectively, when the configuration and connection are complete, then PCA should have an encrypted session over into the 192.168.3 network. So let's take a look at SDM, which is running on PCC and connected to router 3. Now you can see from the home screen on SDM, it shows us some basic VPN information. Number one, as I look, and I need to make sure that's an available feature on my router. If it's not available, of course, I won't have the option to configure that. And then going down to the bottom right, I can see the number of active VPN clients, and in my case, it shows 0 because I don't have the configurations set up yet. Now, my router itself has basic information. It has IP addresses on the interface and some basic routing information, but other than that, it's a pretty clean configuration. So I'm going to go into configure, and as you can see along the left, I have a number of options, and I'm going to be configuring VPN. Of course, two things I want to pay close attention to is the firewall and the NAT, and I would want to make sure I have those configurations completed prior to my VPN if I chose to do that. So clicking on VPN, I have some basic tasks I need to complete. The basic tasks certainly are trying to make sure that I have the necessary policies and encryption transforms in place to perform this connection. Now, SDM, nicely enough, provides a wizard to do the configuration for me, because if I had to do it by hand, there's a good chance it would be close to 50 commands that I would be looking forward to typing in to making it work. So the SDM does a real nice job making the configuration easy for me to do. Now let's take a look. I have some options up here. I have site-to-site VPN, which is if I wanted to have router-to-router encryption as opposed to client-to-site, but site-to-site. I have a VPN remote, and that's if I had a server already configured and I wanted to connect a router up as a remote client-type server connection. And then I have an easy VPN server, which is what I'm going to be configuring today. I also have a dynamic multi-point option if I have an environment where I have a hub-to-spoke type of VPN connection. I'm going to go up to Easy VPN Server, and I'm going to click the Launch Easy VPN Wizard. Now, first of all, of course, it prompts me and tells me I need to have AAA enabled. Since it's a basic router configuration, I don't have that, so I'll go ahead and say Enable AAA. And you can see it's submitting 11 commands down into the router. Clicking OK, it should prompt me, and now let me continue my VPN configuration. Now, you can see it looks a bit intimidating, all the commands that it makes me do and use to create this connection, but really the wizard does a nice job of tying everything together, and they take something that can be a fairly complex task of several dozen commands and wrapping it into a nice few-step wizard. So let's go ahead and continue our configuration. First, it asks me, where do you want to tie your VPN to? Now, of course, I can put if I have a loopback, and that's typically popular to do, I can create an additional interface and then tie that to my loopback. Or I can just go ahead and click on Numbered and tie my VPN connections, my clients, into my internal network using my unnumbered interface, which is my physical interface. Next, I have to make a decision on authentication. My authentication in this case defaults to pre-shared keys, but I can use digital certificates or both. In our case, we're going to be using a group policy, and our group policy will be tied to a pre-shared key. So we're going to go ahead and put pre-shared key in there. The next thing I need to do is I need to actually create a policy, an IKE policy, and the policy is what allows me to perform my phase 1 SA or my phase 1 association, which is my trust and environment. And you can see in this case it defaults as a default configuration of triple DES, SHA-1, group, and pre-shared key. And if I choose to, I can go ahead and add another policy. I can up my encryption to AES 256 if I choose to do that. I can up to Diffie-Hellman group 5. And I can if I wanted to, I can keep my pre-shared configuration in this setting. You can see, so I can create my policy. A lot of times people will create and use the default policy that's provided for you. I'm going to go ahead and continue. Now, the next thing I have to do is the transform set. The transform set is designed to provide information necessary for the phase 2 IPsec configuration, which is my process to actually encrypt the data through the connection. Remember, phase 1 is our trust, and phase 2 is our actual encryption. So it defaults to an ESP triple DES SHA, but in my case, I'm going to go ahead and add a new one. I'll call it my set. I'm going to use an algorithm for integrity if I choose, and I don't have to choose integrity and encryption. Not always something people do, but I'm going to go ahead and choose ESP-SHA, and I'm going to choose AES 256 as my encryption. And again, this is the actual encryption of the data within the client-to-site connection. I'll go ahead and click Next here. Now, of course, there's different ways. If you have users coming in from the VPN, you have to have them authenticate somewhere. You can do that on a local database, or you can tie that back to Radius. We're going to go ahead and click Local and set up a local database on our router. And again, I continue to say local here, but I do need to add users. So if I want to go back and add users, I need to pop up the user credentials and add the user. I'm going to go ahead and say VPN user, and my password will be VPN pass. And I'll go ahead and click OK and OK. And that allows me again, and I can add more users if I chose. I could say John Smith or Jay Smith. So if I had 10 users coming in, I can manage that database of users right here. The next step I have to do is create what they call a group, or for group authentications and group policies. Group policies provide a number of settings that are downloaded to the client that would be for multiple clients. So anything you'd want to apply to multiple clients, you do within your group policy. And this includes IP address information, DNS, WINs, and domain information. I'm going to go ahead and click Add to create my group. And I'm going to call this group VPN Group. Now, with the VPN group, this is what ties us to our pre-shared key. So I'm going to create a pre-shared key called secret. And then in my address pool information, I'm going to enter an address pool that ties back to my internal network. In my case, it's 192.168.3. But I'm going to go ahead and push the IP addresses that are assigned out to the VPN clients up to 101 through 192.168.3.199. So I can assign a total of 99 IP addresses out to my VPN clients. It does give me a little warning saying, by the way, your VPN clients will be on the same network as your internal network. And I said that that's okay. In some cases, you'd want to have a loopback and tie your internal addresses to a different network. It provides for some increased security if you make that choice. Now, from this point, I can click Next. There is a feature that's called CTCP. It's a system global setting, and it helps out if I have a firewall turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. It's a good setting to click if you do, in fact, have a firewall in the environment. There's my settings that are going to be sent down to the router. Of course, this is just a summary, not the actual commands. I can click Finish, and there it is, 49 commands. So with the AAA and with the VPN configurations, that's a total of about 60 commands that it took. And you can see it was very simple to step through the SDM to be able to type those or get those 60 commands sent down to my device. That's pretty much it. If I go home, of course, go back to the Home button. It doesn't show anything different, but it should if I get a VPN connection actually established. So I'm going to switch over to PCA because that's my VPN client. And I'm going to fire off the VPN client. Now the VPN client is a download installed utility. It's we're using version 5.0.04.03. I think it's of the latest. And what that does is that'll make sure that I have the latest encryption protocols and support for the latest iOSs up on the router. Very simple to create a client connection, and you want it simple because your users are going to be doing this in many cases. So I can go ahead and click New, and then I'm going to go ahead and say Site R3. And again, this doesn't matter, it's just a description, same as in the description, Site R3. The host is the IP address of the VPN server itself, and in this case it's 10.2.2.1, and that's very important. If I want to verify that I can actually reach the VPN server, that's always a good step. So you can see I can reach the VPN server. And the only other information I need to put in is my group information. So I'm going to go ahead and put in VPN group, which is what I created. And I put the password of I think I use the password secret. Let's try that. So I'll put secret in. Again, this is not the password of the user. This is not the user. This is the connection for the pre-shared key within the policy. So again, VPN group and secret is what I recall using. And we're done. The only thing we need to do now is actually test the connection. And I can double click on that entry. I can type in VPN user with a password of VPN pass. And actually, if you click on the site connection and it does prompt up with a user authentication, that means you're in pretty good shape. If you don't get that pop-up box, there's something not tied together in the configuration properly. But it's a good chance that when you do get the username and password box, there's a good chance that it is going to work properly. I'll go ahead and perform the connection. And if everything works right, the box will disappear. If I look to my lower right and highlight the little padlock, I can see it's connected. And if I do want to choose to verify some of my configurations, I can take a look. And in fact, I did get an IP address of 192.168.3.101, which was the first in my pool. I have a crypto encryption of 256-bit AES, which was the transform that I created in the HMAC SHA-1. I see that I do have some packets that are already been encrypted. And to finally verify, I can go to my command prompt and look at my IP address, and if all's worked properly, I notice my local gateway was removed, and now I'm using actually my VPN gateway. And you can see my IP address is 192.168.3.101. Now, if I wanted to communicate to the host inside the network, I can type in 192.168.3.2, and now I'm able to ping that actually from my VPN connection. So as you can see, the creation of the connection through the SDM for a client-to-server environment is fairly straightforward, and I would encourage you to go ahead and try that configuration when you on your own or when you have the availability to do so. Thank you.